The weird thing isn't that Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2 smart glasses exist. The weird thing is how fast you forget you're wearing them. And that's dangerous in the best possible way. Because once you stop noticing them on your face, that's when you start noticing what they actually change. Let me ask you something real quick. What if the most powerful tech upgrade this year doesn't look like tech at all? What if it looks like glasses you'd already wear anyway? Because that's exactly where this story starts, and trust me, it does not end where you think it does. The first time you pick up Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2. Nothing screams smart gadget. No glowing lights. No screens flipping open. No futuristic weirdness. They look like classic Ray-Ban frames. Wayfarer styles people have worn for decades, and that's not an accident. Meta doesn't try to shock you here. They try to disappear. And the moment you put them on, something subtle happens. You stop bracing for tech behavior. They sit like normal glasses. The weight feels balanced, not front heavy, not sliding down your nose. The arms don't clamp your head. You don't feel pressure points screaming, "Hey, I'm electronics." And that matters more than specs ever could, because wearability decides whether smart glasses live in the drawer or on your face. Now hold that thought, because comfort is only the surface layer of what's really happening here. You wear them for a few minutes, then 10, then 30, and suddenly you realize you haven't adjusted them once. That's rare, especially for glasses that hide speakers, microphones, and a camera inside. And here's where things start getting interesting. Because once your brain stops registering them as a device, they become something else entirely, a tool you only notice when you need it. And that changes how you interact with technology altogether. But before we get to what they do, we need to talk about how they behave when you're just living. Imagine walking down a street. Your phone is in your pocket. Notifications aren't lighting up your vision. There's no screen pulling your eyes downward. You're just walking. Now imagine your favorite music starts playing quietly, directly into your ears, but nobody around you hears it. That's the first "wait, what?" moment for most people, the open-ear audio. The speakers are built into the arms of the glasses, angled precisely toward your ears. And no, this isn't bone conduction hype or sci-fi marketing. It's directional audio. And when you hear it for the first time, it feels like someone is whispering sound just for you. But here's the real question. What happens when you turn your head? Does it leak sound? Does everyone nearby hear your music? That's what everyone worries about. And in normal environments, walking, sitting, standing, the audio stays surprisingly private. It's not silent to others, but it's controlled. This isn't headphone replacement power. This is situational audio. Podcasts while making tea. Calls while your hands are full. Directions while walking. And the magic is that you're still aware of the world, cars, people, reality. Doesn't get shut off. And that awareness becomes more important in just a moment, because now we need to talk about the camera. Yes, there's a camera. Yes, it records video and takes photos. And yes, this is where people immediately get nervous. But slow down, because the way this camera operates tells you a lot about Meta's priorities here. It's a 12-megapixel camera positioned on the frame, always visible, with a physical LED indicator that lights up whenever recording happens. You can't turn that light off, ever. And that's not a limitation, it's a boundary. One that keeps this product grounded in the real world. You tap the frame, one tap, not digging through menus. Not unlocking a phone, one physical action. And suddenly, you're capturing exactly what you're looking at. Not what you framed 5 seconds later. Not what you missed while fumbling for your phone. It's immediate. But here's the part nobody expects. You don't use it constantly. You don't feel tempted to, because there's no preview screen. No chance to overthink framing. No dopamine hit from perfect shots. You capture moments only when they matter enough to interrupt the moment itself, and that limitation changes behavior. Think about it. When you use your phone camera, your attention splits instantly. You become director instead of participant. With these glasses, the capture happens from within the experience, not outside it. The footage isn't cinematic. It's honest. Slight head movement. Natural perspective, human timing. And when you review those clips later, they feel different. They don't feel staged. They feel remembered. But what about quality? That's the obvious follow-up. The photos and videos are good, clear, usable, shareable, but they don't chase flagship smartphone territory. And that's intentional. These aren't meant to replace your phone camera. They fill the gap phones can't reach. Moments where pulling out a phone would break the moment entirely. A quick laugh, a spontaneous view, a hands-busy situation. That's the lane this camera owns. Now, let's complicate things slightly because recording isn't the only way these glasses communicate with the world. They listen. There are microphones built in, designed for voice commands, calls, and capture. And this is where Meta's assistant comes into play, but carefully, because we're staying grounded in what's officially available. You can use voice commands to take photos, record video, control music, and make calls. Nothing flashy. Nothing speculative. Just hands-free control that works when your hands can or shouldn't be busy. Picture cooking. Picture biking stopped at a light. Picture holding bags, a kid's hand, or a coffee. Saying, "Take a photo," feels natural here. And it's reliable enough to trust. But reliability always depends on context, and this is where real-world behavior matters more than Dino's crowded street. The microphones still pick up your voice. Wind, it affects quality, but calls remain usable. This isn't studio gear. It's wearable reality. And that honesty is baked into every design decision here. Now let's talk about calls, because this is where Gen 2 quietly levels up daily life. Taking a call through the glasses feels strange at first. No phone to ear, no visible action. Just sound arriving. But the clarity surprises people. Voices sound present, not tinny, not distant. And because the audio is open ear, you don't lose spatial awareness. You can keep walking, nodding, reacting. Conversations feel normal. And that's the theme emerging again and again here. Normal, but enhanced. Invisible assistance, not intrusive tech, but all of this only works if the glasses actually stay connected. So what happens when you walk away from your phone? They rely on Bluetooth. That's the reality. No standalone connectivity. Your phone is still the brain in the background. But within normal daily ranges, room to room, pocket to table, the connection holds steady. And because everything syncs through the MetaView app, your photos, videos, and settings stay organized without friction. And here's where suspense creeps back in, because we haven't touched on the part most people misunderstand completely. Battery. Life. Everyone asks the same question. How long do they last? And the answer isn't dramatic, but it's honest. A few hours of active use. A full day of light, intermittent use. And yes, that sounds average. Until you remember how they're meant to be used, you're not constantly recording. You're not blasting audio all day. You're wearing them like glasses. And when you're done, you put them back in the case. And the case charges them. That charging case is quietly one of the smartest parts of the system. Multiple recharges. Drop-in convenience. No cables every time. And because it feels like eyewear storage, not tech storage, you actually use it the way it's intended, which means the glasses are charged when you need them, not dead when inspiration hits. But here's the real cliffhanger, and we're just getting to it because everything we've talked about so far explains how Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2 fits into your day. What we haven't talked about yet is how it changes your relationship with capturing life itself, how it reduces anxiety instead of increasing it, how it slowly rewires habits you didn't even realize were exhausting you. That shift doesn't happen instantly. It sneaks up on you, and that's exactly what we need to unpack next. Because once that realization hits, you stop asking whether these glasses are worth it, and start asking a much more interesting question. And that's where this story really begins. Something strange happens after a few days of wearing Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2, and it's not a feature you can toggle on or off. It's a behavioral shift. You don't wake up thinking, I'm going to use my smart glasses today. You just put them on the same way you put on regular glasses. And that's when the line between tech and habit starts to blur. Let me paint a real scenario. You walk out of your house. Phone in pocket. Glasses on face. No ceremony. No setup. And because nothing demands your attention, your mind stays where your body already is in the moment. That's when the glasses start quietly proving their point. You're walking and your phone buzzes in your pocket. Normally, that's where the break happens. You stop, you look down. You disconnect from the world in front of you. But here, something else happens instead. The audio cue comes through the glasses. You hear who's calling. And without pulling anything out, without breaking stride, you decide whether this moment matters enough to interrupt what you're doing. That decision stays with you, not the device. And that sounds small, until you realize how rare that feeling is. Now imagine answering that call. Your hands stay free, your eyes stay forward. You're still walking, still aware of your surroundings. The microphones pick up your voice clearly enough to hold a real conversation. You're not whispering into a device. You're not shouting, you're just talking. And that normalcy is the trick. Technology usually adds steps. This removes them. But wait, what happens when the environment isn't perfect? Traffic, wind, background noise. That's where reality checks hype, and Gen 2 stays grounded. The microphones don't perform miracles. They perform consistently. And consistency beats spectacle every single time. Now let's go back to the camera, because this is where people think they understand these glasses. And usually don't. Most first-time users treat the camera like a gimmick, a novelty. Something you test once, post a clip, and forget. But that's not what actually happens long-term. Because the camera isn't begging you to use it. There's no screen feeding you previews. No algorithm pushing you to capture more. You don't feel like a content machine. You feel like a human who occasionally decides, this matters. And when you tap to record, the act itself feels intentional, almost ceremonial. Here's the part that catches people off guard. You start trusting your memory again. Phones taught us to outsource remembering, to capture everything because we're scared of forgetting. These glasses push the opposite behavior. You wait until something feels important first. Then you capture. And because the capture is first person, the footage doesn't feel like something you watched. It feels like something you lived. Slight head movement, natural eye line, ambient sound, imperfect timing, all the things phones try to eliminate, are exactly what makes this footage hit harder emotionally. And when you review clips later days, weeks later, you notice something subtle. You don't cringe at missed framing. You don't regret not recording longer. You don't feel pressure to edit. The clips feel complete as they are. Like memory. Fragments. And that's not accidental. That's what happens when technology stops chasing perfection and starts respecting human perspective. But let's talk practicality, because cool philosophy doesn't matter if daily use is annoying. You wear these glasses for hours, indoors, outdoors, sitting, walking, and they don't constantly remind you they're there. They don't heat up noticeably. They don't shift weight awkwardly over time. And that's critical. Because discomfort breaks immersion fast. Gen 2 holds comfort as a baseline, not a bonus. And when something becomes comfortable enough to forget, it earns longevity. Now about controls, because this is where smart glasses usually mess up. Everything here is physical and simple. Tap gestures on the frame. No waving arms. No exaggerated movements that make you look awkward in public. You tap to play music. Tap to pause. Tap to capture. And because the gestures are limited, muscle memory kicks in quickly. You're not learning a language. You're learning a habit. And habits scale better than features ever could. And yes, voice commands exist. They work, but you don't feel forced to use them. You choose based on context. Quiet room? Voice works. Noisy street? Taps work. Flexibility matters. And Gen 2 doesn't lock you into one mode of interaction. It adapts to real life instead of demanding ideal conditions. Now let's address something everyone quietly wonders about. Social friction. What do people think when they see you wearing these? The honest answer? Most don't notice. They look like Ray-Bans. That's the advantage of partnering with a brand that already owns cultural familiarity. You're not broadcasting early adopter. You're not wearing a gadget costume. And because the camera indicator light is visible when recording, there's transparency built into every interaction. People know when you're capturing. There's no ambiguity. And that clarity matters more than raw specs. But here's the twist: over time, even you stop thinking about the social aspect entirely. Because the glasses stop feeling like something you use and start feeling like something you wear. And that's the difference between adoption and novelty. Now pause here, because we need to talk about AI, and we need to do it carefully, honestly, and without hype. The AI behavior here is limited and specific. Voice-based assistants for tasks like taking photos, recording video, controlling media, and handling calls. There's no augmented reality overlay. No live visual annotations. No sci-fi interface floating in front of your eyes. And that's important to say out loud. These are not AR glasses. They are smart glasses. And knowing What they are not is just as important as knowing what they are. And here's the surprising part. That limitation feels like a relief. No visual clutter, no cognitive overload. No constant prompts, just assistance when you ask for it. Silence when you don't. And that restraint creates something rare in modern tech: trust. You trust that the glasses won't hijack your attention. You trust that they won't demand engagement. You trust yourself again. And that trust changes how long you can use them. You don't burn out. You don't feel watched. You don't feel optimized. You just feel supported. Now imagine living with that for weeks, months. That's when the real impact surfaces. Not in features, not in benchmarks, in endurance. You realize you're still wearing them and you never questioned why. No novelty drop-off, no guilt about unused tech, just quiet integration. But now we've reached a turning point because everything so far describes how Gen 2 fits into life. What we haven't explored yet is who these glasses are actually for and who they're not, because that distinction matters more than hype ever could. And once you understand that, the value of Gen 2 stops being abstract and becomes very, very personal. That's exactly what we're diving into next. At some point, after the novelty fades and the routine settles in, a more uncomfortable question shows up quietly. But am I actually the kind of person these glasses are made for? And this is where Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2 either earns its place or slowly slides into a drawer, because here's the truth most reviews avoid. These glasses are not for everyone. And that's not a weakness. That's clarity. Let's start with creators because that's where the emotional pull is strongest. And thinks in terms of thumbnails before moments even happen. Gen 2 might feel limiting. There's no viewfinder, no framing correction, no cinematic control. You don't bend the world to the camera here. The camera bends to the world. And that requires a mindset shift. At first, that shift feels uncomfortable. You catch yourself wishing you could see what the glasses see. You wonder if your head was tilted too much. You worry you missed the moment by half a second. But then something subtle happens. You stop checking, you stop second-guessing. You start trusting your instincts again. And once that trust comes back, your relationship with recording changes completely, because if you're the kind of creator who values immediacy, who cares more about presence than polish? This starts to click in a way that's hard to unsee. These glasses don't ask you to perform your life. They ask you to live it, and only step in when you decide a moment is worth remembering. And that difference reshapes how you define good footage. Good footage stops being about perfection. It starts being about honesty. You realize that shakiness isn't always a flaw. It's proof that you are moving. Imperfect framing isn't careless, it's human perspective. Background noise isn't messy, it's context. The footage feels less like content and more like memory. And memory is never perfectly framed. Now think about daily users, the non-creators, the commuters, the parents, the people who don't introduce themselves as tech people at all. For them, the glasses aren't a camera first. They're an audio device that happens to see when needed. Music during a walk without earbuds sealing off the world. Calls answered without juggling bags or phones. Directions heard without staring down at a screen. These are quiet conveniences. They don't impress on day 1. They matter on day 30. Because day 30 is when habits reveal themselves. It's when you notice you're reaching for your phone less. It's when answering a call feels easier than before. It's when listening to music doesn't isolate you from your surroundings. And this is where Gen 2's design philosophy really shows its hand, because nothing here demands behavior change. You don't learn new gestures beyond a few taps. You don't relearn how to walk, talk, or interact socially. You don't explain yourself to strangers. You don't manage a display floating in your vision. You don't defend wearing them. They ask very little of you. And devices that ask less last longer in people's lives. That's a rule most tech companies ignore. Let's talk about audio in real-world terms, not spec language. The speakers sit close enough to your ears to feel personal, but open enough that you remain aware of everything around you. You hear your music, but also traffic. You hear your call, but also your kid calling your name. This isn't immersive audio meant to replace reality. It's layered audio designed to sit on top of it. And once you adapt to that balance, going back to sealed earbuds can feel strangely isolating. But here's where honesty matters. Audio quality depends on environment. Quiet spaces feel crisp. Busy streets introduce competition. Wind exists. Physics applies. These glasses don't cheat reality. And that's actually the point. Because if they pretended otherwise, trust would collapse quickly. And trust is the invisible theme running through this entire product. Trust that the battery lasts through mixed usage. Trust that the controls respond when you need them. Trust that the glasses won't hijack your attention mid-conversation. Trust that when you do capture something, it will feel like your memory, not the device's interpretation. Trust doesn't come from spectacle. It comes from consistency. Now let's address privacy, because no conversation about cameras on faces gets to skip this. Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2 includes a visible indicator light when recording. That's not optional. It's not subtle. It's not hidden. And while that might sound like a limitation, it's actually what makes public use sustainable. People around you know when you're capturing. There's no guessing, no ambiguity. And because of that clarity, the social tension drops dramatically. You're not sneaking. You're choosing, and something surprising happens over time. You stop wanting to record everything. Because constant recording cheapens moments. The presence of friction, the need to tap, the awareness of the light forces and tension. And intention preserves meaning. These glasses understand that humans need boundaries, not limitless capture. Now let's talk about phone connectivity, because this is where expectations often drift. The glasses work as an extension of your phone, not a replacement. Your phone remains the brain. Storage lives there. Playback lives there. Sharing lives there. And that's fine because it keeps complexity low. You're not managing another ecosystem. You're not syncing across multiple layers. The glasses stay light physically and mentally. And when something goes wrong, because tech always does, eventually the recovery is simple. Restart, reconnect, move on. No troubleshooting spiral. No identity crisis. That simplicity is what allows these glasses to stay wearable. Now, imagine using them on a family outing. You're pushing a stroller. Hands full. Someone laughs. You tap. The moment is saved. No stopping. No reframing. No breaking the flow. Later, when you watch it back, the framing isn't perfect, but the laughter is. And that's what matters. Phones taught us to prioritize composition. Less fumbling with devices. Less eye strain. Less cognitive load. For younger users, it teaches something unexpectedly healthy. You don't need a screen in your face to stay connected. And that might be the most underrated benefit here. Now let's talk battery again, but in context, not numbers. You charge the case at night. You wear the glasses during the day. You don't think about exact percentages. And if you ever start thinking about battery too often, it means the product failed its role. Gen 2 mostly avoids that. Not by being infinite, but by being predictable. You learn its rhythm. And once you learn a device's rhythm, it fades into the background. That's the pattern with Gen 2. Background technology. And here's the contradiction that makes it fascinating. The less it demands attention, the more it earns attachment. Because you don't associate it with stress. You associate it with ease. Now, this is the turning point in the story. Up until now, but we haven't addressed what happens emotionally over time. Not features. Not use cases. But impact. What happens to the way you remember days? What happens to the way you value moments? Over weeks, something quiet shifts. You stop thinking of moments as potential clips. You stop asking, should I record this? You simply feel the moment first. And only if it lingers, only if it matters, you capture it. That delay changes everything. Because anticipation disappears. Pressure disappears. Performance disappears. And what's left is presence. You start remembering moments more clearly, not because you recorded them, but because you lived them fully. The glasses didn't pull you out of the experience. They stood by patiently, ready if needed. And that patience becomes contagious. You adopt it too. This is where Gen 2 stops being a gadget. And becomes something closer to a philosophy. It suggests that technology doesn't have to demand attention to be useful. That it doesn't need to be visible to be valuable. That restraint can be a feature, not a compromise. And that idea lingers long after you take the glasses off. You notice how aggressive other devices feel, how often they interrupt, how rarely they wait. And once you feel that contrast, you can't unfeel it. Because once you stop thinking about what these glasses do, you start noticing what they quietly change. They change your pace. They change your patience. They change your Relationship with memory. And that's where we're heading next. At some point, usually without realizing it, you stop thinking about what these glasses do and start noticing what they quietly change, not in your workflow, not in your output, but in how you remember things. That's the moment Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2 stops being a product review and starts becoming something harder to label. Because memory has always been selective. Cameras didn't fix that. Phones didn't fix that. In fact, they often made it worse. They trained us to overcollect and underfeel, to document reflexively instead of intentionally, to fill storage while thinning experience, to chase completeness rather than meaning. And somewhere along the way, we confused documentation with memory itself. Before Gen 2, most recording devices pulled you out of the moment in order to preserve it. You framed first, felt later. You checked angles, lighting, battery, notifications. Even when the recording was good, the moment was already compromised. Divided attention became the price of preservation. And this is where Gen 2 quietly changes. The equation. With these glasses, nothing asks for your attention. There's no glowing screen demanding eye contact. No interface begging to be adjusted. No ritual of pulling something out of your pocket, unlocking it, and mentally switching modes. The moment arrives first. You arrive with it. And only then if it feels right. You capture it. That order matters more than most people realize, because when capture becomes optional instead of compulsive, intention returns. You stop recording to prove something. You stop recording because you might need this later. You start recording because something inside you says, I want to remember this. Not because it's impressive, not because it's cinematic, but because it's yours. That shift doesn't happen overnight. In fact, at first, nothing feels different at all. You wear the glasses. They work, they sound good. The camera does what it's supposed to do, and then days pass, weeks pass. You forget you're even wearing them, and that's where the real transformation begins. You stop thinking in terms of coverage. You stop scanning moments for their shareability. You don't mentally frame shots before they happen. You're no longer narrating your life while living it. You are simply present, fully, quietly, honestly. And when you do capture something, it comes from a place of recognition rather than urgency, a pause, a breath, a decision. Not, I should film this, but I want to keep this. The footage reflects that difference. It's not perfect. It's not always level. Sometimes the framing is slightly off. Sometimes the audio has wind or distant chatter or the hum of everyday life. And weeks later when you revisit it, that's exactly why it feels real. Because memory doesn't care about technical perfection. It cares about context, atmosphere, emotion. It cares about the small imperfections that anchor a moment to how it actually felt. The shakiness of movement. The way someone's voice overlaps with another. The way light changes unexpectedly. Gen 2 preserves that without trying to correct it. And in doing so, it does something rare for modern technology. It respects human experience as it is, rather than trying to optimize it into something else. Over time, you notice behavioral changes you didn't consciously choose. You reach for your phone less. Not because you're trying to be disciplined, but because the urge simply isn't there. You no longer feel the need to translate life into content in real time. You're not auditing moments for their potential value later. You're living them at face value. That alone creates a sense of calm most people can't quite explain until they feel it. There's less anxiety about missing things. Less fear that something important is happening unrecorded. Because when recording becomes frictionless and intentional, trust develops. Trust in the device, but also trust in yourself. You trust that if something truly matters, you'll recognize it. And if you don't record it, that's okay too. That trust begins to spill into other parts of life. Conversations change. You listen more fully. You maintain eye contact longer. There's no subtle drift of attention toward a screen. No micro disconnect. People feel it, even if they can't name it. Interactions become less performative, more grounded. Moments stretch. Instead of fragmenting, a walk feels like a walk again, not a sequence of clips waiting to be harvested. A laugh lands fully instead of echoing through the lens of self-awareness. Silence becomes comfortable, even meaningful, and something unexpected happens. You start noticing details that rarely survive modern life. The way sunlight hits the same window at a certain hour. The rhythm of footsteps behind you. The specific tone of a friend's voice when they're relaxed. The glasses didn't add awareness. They removed interference. This is what most reviews miss. They talk about features, about cameras and microphones and updates, about battery life and controls. Those things matter, but they're not the story. The real story is what happens when technology stops asking to be noticed. Gen 2 doesn't demand attention. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't position itself as the center of the experience. It accepts a supporting role. And because of that restraint, it integrates more deeply than louder, flashier devices ever could. The glasses don't disappear because they're insignificant. They disappear because they're well placed. They become part of the environment, of your life, not the subject of it. And months later, when you look back not at the footage, but at your habits, you realize something fundamental has shifted. Your memories feel intact, not overproduced, not filtered through intention after. The fact, they feel lived in. Lived through. You remember how things felt, not just how they looked. And that's when you understand that Gen 2 isn't primarily about media at all. It's about memory, about presence, about how experience is stored not on a device but in you. This reframes how you evaluate every other wearable. Every screen-based gadget suddenly feels loud, demanding, transactional. You become more aware of how much attention technology typically extracts in exchange for convenience. Gen 2 asks for almost nothing. And because of that, it gives back something. Difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore. It gives back continuity. The feeling that life is unfolding without constant interruption. The sense that you don't need to mediate your own experience through a device to validate it. The glasses don't make moments special. They allow moments to stay special. That's a subtle but profound distinction. Because the ultimate innovation here isn't sharper resolution or faster processing. It's restraint. The courage to step back. To design technology that knows when not to speak. When technology earns trust instead of attention, it crosses a threshold. It stops being a tool. It becomes an extension of behavior, of values, of how you choose to exist in the world. Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2 lives on that threshold. So if you're asking whether they're worth it, the answer won't come from specs or reviews or comparison charts. It will come months later when you notice how rarely you think about them and how different your relationship with moments has become. You'll realize you don't record more. You record better, less often, more intentionally. And the memories you keep feel closer to truth than performance. Glasses won't change your life loudly. They won't announce their impact. They'll simply create space for attention, for presence, for trust. And in that space, life feels just a little more whole. That's the quiet power of Ray-Ban Meta Gen 2. And that's the story no spec sheet could ever tell.